Hello, and welcome to today's coffee break demo. Thank you for joining us and for having a coffee with us. My name is Justus Siage. I'm one of the senior solution consultants here at Sage Intacct, working with finance teams to help them better serve their organizations, leveraging the latest technology available. Before I jump into the software to demonstrate some of the key benefits and the value that Sage Intacct can bring to your growing organization, I'd like to first give you a brief overview of our solution. Intacct was born in the cloud from day one in the late 90s. In 2017, Sage acquired the company and set the stage for an international expansion into Australia and the UK in 2019. Today, Intacct is Sage's flagship cloud financial management solution, serving over 14,000 growing organizations around the world. At the heart of Sage Intacct is a core financial management platform that enables finance teams to automate key processes, cut the month-end close, and deliver powerful insights in real time. This now empowers management to make crucial data-driven decisions. Built on top of this core financial management platform are additional capabilities that support growing businesses such as multi-entity management, multi-currency consolidations, revenue management, and many more. Over time, we have also built out industry-specific solutions such as for not-for-profits, for software and SaaS organizations, professional service firms, and so forth. Being fully cloud-based, the Sage Intacct platform allows you to run your business securely from wherever you may be. In summary, Sage Intacct is a modern financial management platform which provides a robust and scalable solution. The platform provides you with real-time insights into your business through dashboards and reports, saves you time during your month end with our continuous consolidation process, streamlines your business processes like your quote to cash, procure to pay, and so forth, all built on a modern cloud platform which can scale as your organization grows. To best meet the needs of your organization, Sage Intacct provides you with a best-in-class financial management solution with an open API. This allows you to select other best-in-class solutions for other functions for your business, ensuring you're not tied to a single vendor platform. This approach is supported by Gartner's view that we're now in a postmodern ERP era, and the defining factor of this era is a shift away from a single vendor mega suite. On screen are a handful of some of the third-party organizations that we've onboarded into our marketplace to provide you a plug-and-play experience, leveraging a pre-built integration. Your current system may no longer be serving your organization effectively, and I'd like to share with you some of the common challenges that our clients were facing before they made the shift to Sage Intacct. If you're running into some of these issues, you too may have outgrown your current systems and should be looking for a replacement. Firstly, there was inadequate visibility by management into performances to help them make timely data-driven decisions. Additionally, there were lots of manual processes where the finance team found themselves heavily reliant on spreadsheets and manual data entry capture that were error-prone. Information was often siloed, where there was no single source of truth for information, and data was constantly being extracted from multiple sources, stitched together into Excel to try and piece together a story to see how the organization was tracking. Additionally, there were insufficient audit trails, resulting in slowness in finding supporting documentation to substantiate financial transactions at audit time. And then last but not least, there were reports of restricted growth, where as organizations started to expand their service offerings, expand their geographic reach, or even just from sheer volumes of transactions, their current system started to pose lots of challenges. Just like our clients have been able to do so, you too can address these challenges and future-proof your organization by leveraging a financial management platform that's built to scale like Sage Intacct. This would ensure that you have a single solution that's built on the cloud from day one, is able to automate key processes for your finance team, supports multi-dimensional reporting, as well as allows you to easily integrate with third-party solutions and bring together all the information you need into a single platform, providing you visibility for information for real-time decision-making. So let's now proceed to take a look at the solution. In my demonstration today, I'll show you a few key things. Firstly, I'll show you how you can leverage role-based dashboards to grant different stakeholders within your organization the right level of visibility they need to perform their tasks. I'll then proceed to walk you through how you could use dimensional reporting to track and measure the metric that aligns best with your strategic objectives. After that, we'll look at how you can manage multiple entities and easily run a consolidation process to see your entire organization's performance. And then lastly, we'll walk through how you can automate key processes such as procure to pay. Let's get into it. So up on screen, I now have the demo environment of Sage Intacct we'll be stepping through today. The example we'll be looking at today is a company called Skyline that happens to be a software company that also provides professional services. And we'll be logged in as Emma, who happens to be the financial controller. As I mentioned earlier, Sage Intacct is fully cloud-based, and to therefore access the system, all you need is a mobile device, an internet connection, and then you can run the system on any browser of choice. Once you're logged in, Sage Intacct is able to support multiple entities that may span multiple countries and therefore need to support multi-currency as well as multi-tax requirements. All of this is handled natively as part of the core application. The top level is an area where we can start to perform organization-wide functionality, such as defining a common chart of accounts, setting up shared customers or suppliers, but also starting to perform a consolidation process. For our transacting today, you'll see us stay at the top level. However, you can always drill down to the individual entity and transact and report at that entity level. So from the top level, you'll notice I have various role-based dashboards defined. Sage Intacct allows us to create dashboards for different stakeholders within our organization that may need access to information for reporting purposes. In my example here, you'll notice I have dashboards for my finance team members, such as my CFO and controller, but I also have dashboards for colleagues who sit outside the finance function, such as individual department managers, some executives, and for Skyline being a professional services firm, I also have dashboards for my project managers as well as resource managers. This allows us to let key stakeholders within the organization self-service. From these dashboards, we're able to present the information in the most meaningful manner to these different stakeholders. We have different types of graphs, such as line graphs, bar charts, pie charts, as well as scorecards that let us take one key number, provide a comparison, and include a visual indicator to show whether or not the numbers are moving in the right direction as per our strategic objectives. Changing gears for a moment, if we come to my controller's dashboard, we are also able to include financial statements. So in my example here, I can include a profit and loss report, tracking actuals versus budget, and start to include conditional highlighting. So for example, where there's no budget assigned, I can highlight this in yellow. And where we've gone over budget, I can highlight this in red and really start to focus my users' attention to the areas I'd like them to pay attention to. If we come back to my CFO's dashboard for a moment, I'd like to highlight a couple of things. So for my CFO, we're really focused on seeing the bigger picture. And as part of this, we want to see our revenue performance, and as part of reporting our revenue, we can see our total revenue compared to our services revenue with our conditional highlighting here. So you'll notice for our services revenue, we're a little under budget. However, as we're fairly close, this may not warrant further investigation. If we contrast this to our operating expenses for the month, where we're significantly over budget, this may warrant us to investigate this further. From any of these dashboard components, we're able to drill down to see the underlying information. So if I needed to query the spend on operating expenses, I'd simply click into the dollar value. Notice my dashboard remains open and the underlying report is then opened up for me. Let's make this full screen for easier viewing. So from this underlying report, I can then start to see my budget versus actuals. And scrolling down, I can see the total figures that were shown to me on the comparison on the scorecard. If I wanted to query any of the components on this report, I'd simply click into the dollar value, and the system then opens up the underlying general ledger report, where I can see the individual transactions and drill down further to query those transactions. In this example, I can then look at my AP invoice and see the detail behind this invoice. I can see the invoice status, I can see who the vendor is, as well as see if there was any attachments provided to support this transaction. In this case, you'll notice there was no attachment provided. We then have an inbuilt collaboration tool that allows us to have conversations at the transaction record level. This now means that at audit time, we're not digging through months worth of emails to try and substantiate transactions for our auditors, as we can bring all of those conversations into Sage Intacct and have them on the transaction record, share files and links, and therefore have a single source of truth at audit time. Coming back to our dashboard, the drill down capability is available to us across all of our dashboard components, be it scorecards, be it our various charts, or even financial statements. We can allow the user to drill all the way down to the underlying transactions to substantiate them further. So in addition to reporting our revenue and expenditure, as well as our operating margin, there may be other metrics that's important for our stakeholders. So in this particular example, our CFO is really concerned about tracking our EBITDA number, our income, and then tracking our profit margin as a percentage in comparison to prior periods. We can then start to provide different stakeholders the right level of information that they need. If we come back to my controller's dashboard for a moment, for my controller, we're now focused at the next level of financial information. So I really want to start to see my general and admin expenses for the month compared to budget, as well as my AP and AR position for the current month, together with non-financial data, such as my employee headcount. I can report on this non-financial information isolated on its own like this, or I can also start to use it to provide more context to my management reports. As an example, for my financial controller, we're looking at our expenses summary by different departments within the organization. In this particular report, I can start to see each of my departments side by side, and then a total across all of my departments. In this report, I'm tracking my total operating expenses at a department level, tracking the employee headcount at the department level as well, and then using these two figures to compute what my operating expenses per employee is per department. This now starts to give me an idea of my costs across each of these different areas of our organization. This ability to segregate our organization into departments is made possible by the dimensional GL structure that Sage Intacct has adopted. Sage Intacct allows you to define your chart of accounts, as well as various dimensions that best reflect your organization's key metric. As an example here on my dashboard filters, you'll notice I can filter my dashboard down by the date, as well as by different dimensions that I'm tracking in the system. So in this example for Skyline, we're tracking our location, department, service lines, as well as individual projects and tasks, being a professional services organization. So you're able to basically track the dimensions that are most relevant for your organization and then start to use them for reporting purposes. Here for my controller, you'll notice as part of my dashboard filtering, I've allowed the controller to filter by department, location, and service line, as well as the date. So while we look at the information on our dashboard, we can go ahead and add filters. So I'll use my department filter here as an example to filter down just my services department, apply that as a filter, and in real time, all my dashboard components filter down to show me the performance of just my services department. We can then start to see the number of employees. My profit and loss report is now shrunk down just to show me the P&L for this department. And my expenses summary by department now only shows me the performance of my services department. In addition, you can report on groups of departments instead of just individual departments. For example, I have my profit centers, which in my example consists of both my sales and services departments. This now starts to allow us to slice and dice our organization to the right level of detail. Additionally, we can start to filter down individual entities or groups of entities. So if you open up all my departments for a moment, from my entity selection, I can filter down groups of entities such as my operating locations or individual entities such as my US entity. Apply my filter, and the same concept applies where all my dashboard components filter down to show me the metric based on the parameters that I've defined. This ability to start to slice and dice based on dimensions allows us to start to open up our financial management system to people outside the finance team. And we can do this with a peace of mind that they only have access to the relevant parts of our organization that we authorize them to. Sage Intacct has adopted a role-based user permission that allows you to define who gets access to different parts of your organization and what level of access you grant them from a transaction processing perspective. Let's look at an example of this. So to see an example of how permissions are defined in Intacct, we're able to firstly define our various user roles. In my example here, I have 9 different user roles defined. One of those user roles happened to be my AP manager role. Within this user role, I'm able to specify exactly which parts of the system they have access to. So in my case, I can say they only have access to accounts payable. And then furthermore, within accounts payable, I can define at a very granular level what level of access I'd like them to have. For example, with my vendors, I may decide to only allow them to transact with existing vendors in the system, and I'll take away the ability to add, edit, or delete vendor records, or even view vendor bank details. This allows me to have really tight segregation of duties, depending on the different functions within our organization. And once we've defined our roles, we can then go about assigning these roles easily to different users within our organization. Chelsea happens to be our AP manager user, and drilling down into Chelsea's user record, I'm able to go ahead and assign her roles as appropriate. She currently has that AP manager role we looked at, and to open up her access further, I can go ahead and assign her additional roles as appropriate. So for example, I'll give her the employee user access so she can put through her own expenses, and I'll also give her manager level access as she has a team reporting to her. In addition, we can start to restrict which entities this individual user has access to. And should we have departments, we can also start to restrict this user to the individual departments that we'd like them to see. This comes in handy when you start to open up your system to some of your department managers, and you'd only like them to see transactions pertaining to their department. So to recap, Sage Intacct provides us a really powerful reporting engine with a dimensional GL structure, as well as a security framework to start to open up the system as much as we need to for individuals across our organization. If we now look at an example here of my project manager's dashboard, here's an example of how we can start to bring in not just your financial reporting, but really detailed level of operational reporting to track the performance of the organization. For Skyline, being a professional services firm, we're really keen on tracking the number of hours worked and what the cost of delivering the hours has been, what our revenue looks like, and starting to compute our gross profit. As we look at this information, we can then start to see a snapshot across individual projects. This allows us to look at multiple parts of the system and combine it into a single report. So in this snapshot, I'm starting to see my accounts receivable position with open invoices. I can see my total billings for the project lifetime, how much revenue we've recognized, and also statistical values in terms of number of hours worked and costs that have been incurred to help me then compute my gross profit as well as my profit margins. As I view this information, I'm able to use dimensions again as filter parameters on my dashboard. So for example, I can filter down and look at either all my projects or projects that belong to a particular project manager, or different groupings of my projects. So if I wanted to look at all of my active fixed fee projects as an example, I simply change my filter parameters. And like you saw earlier, all my dashboard components realign to show me this new view based on the filter parameters that I put in place. Moving on to one last example of this with my resource managers dashboard. We can do the same thing and start to report on non-financial metrics that are critical. So in this example, I need to track utilization. So to do that, I'm tracking the total number of hours worked. And from those hours, I'm breaking them down into number of hours that were utilized, number of hours that were billable versus non-billable to give me a total view of my utilization. As I view my utilization, I can start to look at this down to the individual colleague level. So in this example, I'm looking at my utilization by employee. On the left-hand side of the report, I'm seeing my monthly utilization numbers. And on the right-hand side, I'm seeing my annual utilization numbers with a spark line to show trends over time. I've then included conditional highlighting. So where utilization is below 85%, I'm highlighting those in red. And the lower below 85% it is, the darker the shade of red, just to help me focus my attention. Additionally, we can start to look at the utilization based on time period, such as a quarterly basis, or summarize our utilization by job title. This allows us to start to get the right level of information that we need to our different stakeholders to help drive data-driven decision making. Let's come back to my CFO's dashboard. So to recap, the reporting capabilities that Intacct provides allows you to report on both your financial performance as well as some of your management reporting metric. We then have your multi-entity support, as I mentioned, which could consist of entities with different currencies. We allow you to easily go about running a consolidation process across your entities, leveraging our inbuilt consolidation engine. So let's take a moment to walk through how consolidations works within Intacct. If you need to consolidate multiple currencies, we have a consolidation engine where we're able to define multiple consolidation books. In my example here, I have 3 different consolidation books running in the system simultaneously. My global consolidation book consolidates all my entities into USD. I then have a second USD consolidation book that just consolidates my North American operations. And then my third consolidation book consolidates my non-US entities into GBP. Once you've defined your consolidation books, you're able to define a few things. Firstly, the currency that you're consolidating into, the entities that are included in the consolidation book, and then also bring across the various dimensions that you'd like to include in your consolidation for reporting purposes. This now allows you to not only perform consolidations for the purposes of statutory reporting, but you can also start to use it for management reporting purposes. So in my example here, I'm consolidating and retaining my entity as well as department information to allow me to still get to this level of detail from the consolidated numbers. Intacct then automatically takes care of your elimination entries, where your intercompany loans are automatically picked up and eliminated. And should you have additional accounts that you'd like to also eliminate as part of that consolidation process, you can easily define them. Once your consolidation is set up, you can easily run this consolidation process. Simply choose the consolidation book and the period that you'd like to consolidate and hit consolidate. This then triggers the consolidation process to run. Alternatively, you can schedule the consolidation to run on a set interval. You do not have to wait for your month-end close to run this consolidation. You could run this as frequently as daily. Once a consolidation is run, simply provide an email address and the system will then send an alert to notify the user that that consolidation process has been finalized. Once you run your consolidation, you're then able to go ahead and produce consolidated financial statements. Let's take a look at a few examples. So on this particular consolidation dashboard, I'm tracking my consolidated financial statements, being my balance sheet and P&L. The two reports I have here are from my global consolidation book that consolidates all my entities. And I can then start to see each entity in its own column and then a total across all my entities with my elimination entity and the elimination entries that have been booked. On the same dashboard, I can also include the metric from my other consolidation books, such as the consolidation of my North America operations, as well as the consolidation of my GBP operations. In addition to this, we could surface some of this consolidated metric to different stakeholders within the organization. So for my CFO as an example, we can start to provide them a view from our global consolidation. So in this particular example, for my CFO, we can start to see a consolidated view of our organization, the same dashboard we looked at earlier, where I can start to see my revenue, my operating expenses, as well as my departmental operating expenses. The addition I've made to this is I can start to look at my revenue based on my different entities and their contribution to revenue. As I run these dashboards, we can then include their filters. So with my consolidation book, I included my department as well as the entity as filter parameters. So I can then start to filter down individual entities as well as departments or groups of departments. So let me make this open and see all of my departments within entity 100. My revenue by location dashboard component now just shows me my US entity, and my operating expenses by department now shows me all of my departments. This now allows us to not only prepare financial statements for compliance purposes from the consolidation book, but we can also start to surface information to our managers from our consolidation book by bringing in that dimensional insight. So to recap, Sage Intacct allows you to manage your multi-entity and consolidation workflows with ease, and also bring in the dimensional information into the consolidation so that you can still produce management reports with ease. If we now go to our final topic for today, which is automating workflows, and the example we look at for this particular demo is managing your purchase to pay process. So Sage Intacct allows you to define your full purchase to pay workflow, starting all the way from a purchase requisition to your purchase order and down to your vendor invoice. Across each of these stages, you can define different transactions. So in my purchase order stage, as an example, I have 3 different types of purchase orders. And with my purchase requisitions, I also have 2 different types of purchase requisitions. So being able to define different transaction types allows you to channel them down different paths, but also control permissions in terms of who gets to create the different types of transactions. Additionally, you can go ahead and define approval policies for each of these transaction types. I have an example here of 4 different approval policies, and the one I'd like to draw to your attention is the approval policy here for my purchase order. This approval rule is departmental, and drilling down further, I can see the specifics. So this rule basically states that if there's no specific rule for the department, then they're allowed to spend up to $500, and as soon as we hit that threshold, the transaction must go to our controller to approve, and once we get to $100,000, it must also go to the CFO. I then have my department-specific rules, where for each department, I'm assigning a threshold to the department manager, and once that threshold is exceeded, then Emma, our controller, has to be involved in the process, and should that threshold then be exceeded, we then have to bring the CFO into that approval process. This allows you to define specific rules for individual transactions, and then within those transaction rules, you can define different thresholds for different departments or even entities as appropriate, giving you a lot of flexibility Once you've defined the workflows, your users can easily capture transactions, and those transactions will be routed through the approval process. Your approvers can either get an email notification or decide to action all the approval requests directly from within Sage Intacct. So let's look at an example of this. So here on my controller's dashboard, we're including not only the reports that we've looked at already, but also action items such as approval of transactions. From here, we're able to drill down and see all the transactions that are pending approval. And scrolling down, we'll go to this transaction at the bottom that needs to be approved. We can see who created the transaction for approval, and then we can drill down and see the detail of this transaction. So from the transaction screen, we can start to see full information. We can see if there was attachments provided, the transaction line details, and should we want to query the approval history, simply drill down to our history, and then we can see how this has progressed. So initially, it's been sent to Nikki as the department manager who has approved it, and once Nikki approves it, then it progresses to Emma to then action her approval. Coming back to my transaction window here, we can also start to use our inbuilt collaboration tool to ask questions and find additional information should we need to. To help guide our approver, we can start to surface budget information and help make an informed decision. From my spend insight, I can start to see how much we budgeted for to spend on office supplies for Entity 100 in the IT department. In this example, we budgeted for $261. I can see how much we've spent already, how much we've committed to spend in terms of approved purchase orders that are pending invoicing. And then with this purchase, I can see my funds available. This now starts to help me as the approver to make an informed decision as to whether or not this transaction should go ahead. So to recap, you're able to define your transaction workflows from procure to pay. And as part of those transaction workflows, you can include approval processes and make it easy for your approvers to see information pertaining to budgets and how they're tracking before they go ahead and hit approve. So what we've seen today is how you can start to use a platform like Sage Intacct to define role-based dashboards for different stakeholders within your organization, and use dimensions to define your organizational structure, and then start to surface those same structures to your managers on the role-based dashboards. Sage Intacct is also then able to handle your international expansion with multiple entities and the need to consolidate with ease, and also help you drive efficiency along key business processes, such as procure to pay, and start to include approval workflows as part of that. Let's now move on to our next part of our discussion today, which is Q&A. So if you haven't done so already, please go ahead and put your question into the chat, and we'll try to get to them on this call, time permitting. If we run out of time, we'll get in touch with you after this call to try and answer those questions. So the first question is to do with reporting. Are reports and dashboards provided out of the box? Yes, so we do provide you a large number of reports and dashboards out of the box natively. What's important to note though is the report writer is designed for you as a finance team to be able to take ownership of and easily write your own reports and dashboards without needing technical assistance. The next question is to do with dimensions. Is there a limit to the number of dimensions that the system supports? We haven't capped it. We've kept it flexible, and you can have as many dimensions as you need. Typically, our clients would run about 9 to 10 dimensions, and the reason for that is you do not need to run too many of these. Intacct allows you to capture attributes of a single dimension and use it for reporting purposes. So for example, if you needed to report on your revenue based on client industry and client geographic location, you don't need to have 3 dimensions, one for client industry, and a third for client location. You simply combine all of that information on your client record by populating a field on their industry, capturing their address, And then you can go ahead and start to segregate your customers based on the industry they're in, the geographic location, to give you that breakdown of your revenue analysis without necessarily trying to run 3 separate dimensions. So that starts to give you a really scalable solution. Now we're right on time. We're going to have to call it there. Unfortunately, we've not been able to get to all the questions. If we've not been able to answer your particular question, we'll get in touch with you after this. Thank you for joining us on today's call. Feel free to visit us on our website to find out more.